Peter. I've had 3 curiosity explosions in my life. The first one was when I was 5 years old. My parents showed me a globe and they said, well, here on top of this one, that's where you were born, and that's everything that you ever know is in that little dot that you can't even see properly. All the rest you haven't seen, and it's just there to explore. I was like, wow, well, I gotta explore it. It all needs to be explored. It didn't take long before I found out that the whole world had already been explored. I became a geographer anyway, though. My second curiosity explosion was when I was about 7 years old. I was playing Lego with my friend Martin. I was making my little Lego house. And I looked over and I couldn't see what he was making. And I asked, Martin, what are you making? And he said, well, I'm making a spaceship to fight off aliens and protect against solar storms. I was like, space? Aliens? What's out there? How many stars are there to explore? And can we do that? Well, it didn't take long for me to find out that it was actually pretty hard. And actually 2 years before I played Lego, this picture was taken. It's a really bad picture, I'm sorry about that. But it's the best picture ever taken. The picture taken furthest away from Earth. The white dot is Earth. That's everything we know. It's right there. And that's the furthest we've gone away. So, I said I had 3 curiosity explosions in my life. And the third one was about 3 years ago. A giant fog is forming around the planet. It's a magical fog that can create sorcery, like alien resources, wherever it condensates, and creates superpowers for the people who are there. I'm going to talk about this fog today. And for you to imagine this fog, here's an example from Tim Urban. He's a great guy. I encourage you to check him out. Imagine that you went into a time machine and you went back in time, like 250 years, to the year 750. And you grabbed a guy from that time to the present. This is George Washington. So what would you show him when he was finally here? Well, you could show him shiny capsules racing away at vast speeds. You could show him a video of a horse racing live from another part of the planet. George Washington liked horse racing. You could show him a blue dot on a map and tell him that that's where he is. Then you can make him talk with a guy or a girl from the Andes. Or you could play a concert that was played 50 years ago for him. And that's all before you start talking to him about the internet, the International Space Station, the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, nuclear power, and the theory of general relativity. Alright, so imagine the amount of surprise that George Washington would feel. And let's just call this amount of surprise X, just for fun of it. And imagine that then George Washington wanted to have just as much fun as we had, showing a person from his past around in his present. What would he do? Well, he would obviously go into the time machine, travel back in time to 250 years, 250 AD, and drag a guy from that time into his present. This is Shakespeare. So what would he show him? Well, he could show him amazingly tell him that the world is round, and he could tell him some pretty mind-bending things about the fact that the Earth is in the center of the universe, and there's a solar system. That's pretty cool, but it's not the same amount of X surprise. So the question is now, how far back does George Washington need to go in order to have just as much fun as we had? Well, I argue that he needs to go back to the year 12,000 BC. Because then he could take a random guy and he could drag him to the year 750 and show him towering churches and cities. Like this is Paris. He could show him agriculture and the concept of being inside and some constructions that can transport things and people to the other, like across oceans, and libraries, the whole concept of building knowledge and standing on the shoulders of giants. All that would be this amount of surprise x. Well, heck, let's take the third one. Now, our new guy now. How far does he need to travel back to have just as much fun that we and George Washington had? I think he would need to go 1,000,000 years back. Because then he could drag these 3 humanoids into his present and show him fire and speech and probably also some pretty cool hunting methods. That'd be really nice. So what do we have now? Well, before, the amount of surprise x took 1,000,000 years. Then it took 14,000 years. Then it took 270 years. And the question is, how long is it going to take the next time? And the next time after that, and the next time after that, and the next time after that. Well, this is the reality that you live in. You are now startups, investors, business people, and you live in this, and you have to deal with this. And now is the time where the fog is coming. You're no longer gonna work as a baker because your dad was a baker. You're gonna have to find some new weird thing to work with that's totally unimagined before. Well, if only things went so slow. I have to tell you that there's a new player in the game that just accelerates everything. It's called artificial intelligence. And this is the past 100 years. It's a steady curve, whereas the First and Second World War in this graph, whereas the Great Depression, it's just going, accelerating exponentially upwards. If we take this graph and we follow it further along, we find out that, well, in about 2023, we can buy a computer that has the same brain power as the human brain, computing power. And in 45, we can buy a computer for $1,000 that has the amount of calculating power of all brains combined. This is going to speed up stuff. And I want to tell you that there is a third player in this game now that, well, not many people are talking about it, but it's called wizard hats, or machine brain interfaces. And it's just a third thing that accelerates everything. I can draw a similar graph for you with this one. Started in 1960 until now, exponential technology. Creating more intelligence, creating more fog. That's the fog. And what are you going to do about it? Because this is business too. I mean, you're a startup, you're somewhere down in that fog, or you're a business research and development, and new resources are coming, and you have to find them. The problem is, it's really hard to find these resources because you need to think ahead. You need to be that visionary or creative person. So how do you find those resources? I'm going to give you a tool for that today. It's called the technology tree. This tree shows you the 7 technologies on Earth that are developing exponentially right now. I can just name them. There's space exploration, there's genetic engineering, energy production, the internet, there is nanotech and robotics, processing and AI, and 3D printing. So now you're actually looking into the fog. Now you're doing the exercise of thinking, yeah, because you see the graph, the x-axis are the years. And now I ask you to imagine, when will something be invented? Like when are we going to have the first human on Mars? Or the first base on Mars? Or when are we going to 3D print the first freewear clothing from H&M? Or like whatever you can imagine. When are we going to cure cancer? But to answer these questions, it's not enough to just say, well, I'm an expert in space. I know that we will have a base on Mars in 2050. Because that depends a lot on 3D printing, for example, or the internet, or nanotech and robotics. It depends upon the development of these technologies. For example, if it becomes possible to 3D print a base in 10 years, well, then we're probably going to have a base on Mars before 2050. So we need to think across sectors, and all these are increasing each other to develop even faster. Or let's take another example, another resource that you could find in this fog. Curing cancer, for example. Well, you can say, I'm an expert in cancer because I know genetic engineering or nanotech and robotics, because that is where curing cancer is. Well, yeah, but there's also the internet that's developing exponentially with VR, see it all in the corners out here, or augmented reality, something we can work together. AI will be able to translate stuff simultaneously, so you can work with a Chinese group and have in front of you an augmented thing that you can work with, and that all speeds up everything. So if you want to find resources in this fog, you need to look into this fog, and you need to create this picture for yourself and probably share it with others, because you have one idea of something here and your friend has another idea, and it's when you talk about it that you find out what probably will happen. I made my own little map about this. You can find it in my blog if you want. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. I'm just going to say AI, that's a joker, so watch out for that one. Okay, you're in the fog, you found the resource, but now the next problem is, how do you get to that resource? And in order to get to it, I argue that you need the Jeep. So what is the Jeep? How do you get there? Well, the Jeep is something called mission learning. Mission learning is the opposite of institutional learning. That's what many of us are used to. So institutional learning, I'll start with that. What is that? Well, for example, institutions of schools were invented about 250 years ago for the Industrial Revolution in order to create workers to work in the factories. Sit still, work from 9 to 5, listen to the authorities, be efficient. That's what's been creating something called jobs. And this is the ideal job worker. You find him in many cubicles around the world, the modern man. And yeah, the whole concept of job isn't more than about 300 years old. I just want to remind you that millions of years, that's how we looked. Look at how ripped that guy is. So, mission learning, the Jeep, the thing that can make us go to that resource, what is it? Well, it's the concept. I'll show it with a concept here, with an example. Imagine that you want to learn how to free dive in the Caribbean Ocean. Well, then you would need to learn how to swim, and you can't read about that, you have to jump in. But then afterwards you also need to know what fish are dangerous, and how much air can I have in my lungs, the physics of air, and my biology. You need to learn how that works. And by doing it, by having a mission that, yes, I want to learn how to free dive, then you suddenly become able to learn things much faster and much more internalized. You probably also need to learn how to find out money to go to Caribbean in the first place. That's also a science. This is the future of learning, and this is how you learn fast. And in the future of work, AI is coming, and if you want to compete with that, you need to learn fast. And this is much faster than institutional learning. And the next tool, and last tool I want to give you today, is something that you can use with mission learning to speed up the learning process. And it's called a mastermind group. This is a way of getting knowledge to yourself in your mission. And the concept is simple. It's basically you take 4 or 5 people that want to do the same thing as you. They are in kind of the same mission as you are. And you meet once in a week, for example, and you talk about your challenges and your mission, and they all listen. And after about 20 minutes, they give you feedback. Like they okay, I heard your point. Now, how have you tried this or have you tried that? And then the next week, the next person tells his challenges, and it goes on round. And this is a perfect way of learning and sharing knowledge in mission learning. That's the Jeep. So you're in a fog, you need to find the resources, and when you find them, you need to get to them. You find the resources with a technology tree, and you get to them through machine learning and mastermind groups. This is what I wanted to tell you today. These are the tools you can use, and I blog about them every day. You can find me there. My name is Peter, and I have the blog called Y+, and I hope to see you there one day. Thank you.